Advent's the time of the Christian year we traditionally prepare for the celebration of Christmas by retelling the stories surrounding Jesus' birth. Stories so familiar that even people who aren't Christian know them. Many Christians will use Advent to revisit what's often a shallow retelling of Joseph and Mary's adventures in childbirth, staging nativity scenes with camels and wise men from the East, conflating timelines and confusing ethnicities while singing pop Christianity's favorite hits. All of it the mangled and misinterpreted product of millennia of bad teaching, even worse learning, and a heap of colonialism, thinly veiled as evangelicalism. I just want to point out one thing about this nativity scene here that I love so much. It's the fan in the corner there, which I'm sure is authentic to Jesus' era because, nobody wants to be in a nativity barn with camels and elephants unless you've got a fan. Anyway, listen. I know that Christians like to make everything about Jesus, but there is a too often missed subtext to our pop culture nativities. The nativity of Jesus isn't only about a person. It's a parable about the evolution and elevation of human consciousness to a more enlightened and loving state. It is a story at once personal and cosmic, a biblical subtext of Jesus as analogous to the entirety of human evolution. What does the story of Jesus' birth mean to you? Advent allows us to take some time to remember that the loving, giving nature of Jesus is within all of us. We're just not necessarily living in his space yet. And it'll take some time to get there. We need to give ourselves a little grace and be patient. For the world to live and act in the utopian manner Jesus discusses, our individual relationships with God must evolve so that we better understand how we're part of each other's stories, because we are. Even if we never meet, we are inextricably entwined with each other through the quantum force most of us call God. There is nothing in the universe that exists independently. Independence is not only a myth, it's a dangerous ideology. Our bodies wouldn't even exist if it weren't for the fact that 36 trillion cells are cooperating to make every single one of us. Our need for each other isn't a weakness. It's how the universe works. Every single element depends on, in some cases, many trillions of other pieces to make a whole. And often, those pieces take billions of years to create something our enormous bodies can even sense, something like a lake or a river in which to swim, or an entire planet to inhabit. We all have Jesus-type work to undertake as spiritually growing individuals and integral parts of the universes of God's evolving love. But love is a process. And it's easy to despair when we think we're not seeing any progress. Advent offers us space to remember that even as we work to create the equitable, peaceful, imaginative, and inventive world that Jesus describes, we have to admit that the process is a long, winding, virtually endless road. The Advent season was intentionally designed to help us actively wait through this process. Psychotherapist Lee Raffel writes, "We are important people. It's hard to wait for answers, solutions, for times to change, the winds to shift, to get our heart's desires. Waiting is like a two-edged sword." She continues, "We're either beset with waiting for others to decide the fate of our lives, or we're engulfed in waiting for ourselves to be our own prime movers. As others tarry, we suffer the angst of second guessing. The longer we linger," she says, "the more depression depletes our energies. In either case, we are laid low, bewildered by a consummate sense of being out of control." Dr. Raffel suggests that humans tend to react negatively when we don't get immediate gratification, believing we're somehow owed the fulfillment of every wish. And if a pursuit becomes too challenging, then we just abandon it instead of becoming more resilient. And then, unfortunately, we end up feeling powerless and resistant to personal growth and change. Dr. Raffel asks, How often do we submit to what's the use or who cares? How often do we yield to feelings of helplessness, limit our options, and refuse to change? Well, to combat our seemingly perpetual sense of stuckness, Dr. Raffel developed the concept of active waiting, which she describes as a pragmatic model for achieving the high art of patience. Webster defines patience as being able to wait calmly for something desired. Raffel's active waiting is a constructive process. It's a conscious use of time. It incorporates a change of attitude from negative to positive, from I can't or I won't to I can and I will. Dr. Raffel concludes, active waiting can be an uplifting experience. Once you're aware of the fertile possibilities of this process, a manageable level of patience can be achieved despite crisis and chaos. As you integrate the following guidelines, you begin to restore your balance, integrity, and sanity. So here are Dr. Raffel's active waiting guidelines. Hold to your vision and accept that your life is in process. Acknowledge that you are impatient. Are you waiting for me to change this slide? Look at waiting as a period of incubation. Understand that incubation is the void where nothing seems to be happening. This is one of my favorites. Understand that incubation is the void where nothing seems to be happening. Be aware that this void can last weeks, months, and even years. Go ahead and recognize your frustration at being obliged to wait. Shake your hands with your frustration and negativity. Then immediately make a 180-degree shift and focus on the meaningful goal you want to achieve and say, I can wait, I can be patient, I can persist. Don't be afraid to feel your suffering when the going gets rough. Know that life's experiences, good and bad, are opportunities for new learning. Acknowledge that no experience, good or bad, is ever wasted. And lastly, develop your spiritual faith. Advent helps us prepare for what's to come as we experience the development of Christ's consciousness within ourselves. Remember, life is a God journey. So let's slow down and be attentive, not mindlessly shamble through the trip. This Advent, let's re-examine the stories of Jesus' birth as a call to understand that the mind of Christ, the conscious universe, is patiently incubating within all of us. Amen. Our question to think about and discuss with each other today is, in what ways are you welcoming the season of Advent, active waiting, into your life this year? How are you going to welcome this season of waiting, and what practices might you use during this active waiting period, this season of Advent? Let's go into breakout rooms for a few moments to discuss.